Support for this News from Lake Wobegon podcast comes from the Sleep Number bed by Select Comfort, the bed that lets you adjust the mattress firmness to your preference, your sleep number. And by Bisquick Heart Smart Pancake and Baking Mix. With 0 grams trans fat and no cholesterol, Bisquick Heart Smart Pancakes are a delicious way to be good to your heart. Bisquick, real pancakes, real good. Well, it's been a quiet week in Lake Wobegon, Minnesota, my hometown, out on the edge of the prairie. Interesting weather here this last week. We had it warm around Sunday and Monday so that it melted some of the snow so that water would spread across the roads and driveways to freeze up on Tuesday when it got really cold again. So you faced a skating rink to drive your car on, and you were reminded as you walked outside your house that growing up on the tundra on frozen ground and ice does not make graceful dancers, does it? No. It produces plodders and pluggers, and that's who we are. So they came through with the salt and the sand, and this gray world, this sort of gray snow was the result of it, and water running down the windows froze up, so we looked out through sort of a prism as if we were underwater. Minus 45. Wind chill, a very serious temperature. They had church service at the Lutheran Church on Tuesday night, which they always do, for people who cannot make it for communion on Sunday morning. And there were not many who showed up. It was just too cold. It was too cold to go sledding. The hill up behind the high school was empty of people. The rink was empty. It was just too cold to do anything. People put on layers of warm clothing, sweaters, which in our case is kind of embarrassing because these are sweaters that people have given us as gifts over the years, Christmas and our birthday. You'd never buy a sweater for yourself because, you have 6, 8, 10 already in your closet, each one uglier than the one beside it. Whatever made people think you would wear these garish things, but you put them on because they are warm and because each house has its own high priest who keeps turning the thermostat down and has a little lecture all prepared that you don't care to hear about burning fossil fuel and, releasing carbon dioxide into the atmosphere and killing off life on our planet just so that we can keep warm. And we could do this simply by insulating our bodies and holding in our own body heat, which is all true. But there you are, 62 degrees in the house, and you can see your breath as you speak, which does kind of inhibit conversation. So all of the peasants in the house are waiting for the high priest to go out and to leave and to go buy natural, organic, biodegradable products from recycled materials, and then they crank the thermostat up to 70, 72, 74 and walk around in T-shirts and be warm. And that's just the nature of life in Lake Wobegon. Pastor Inkvist walked around town, walked up to church for the Tuesday night service, and he could see how quiet everything is. He saw Marilyn and Daryl Tollerud. They were heading away from church. He wasn't going to ask them if they were going to come to the service or not. They were heading off someplace else. He waved to them. They spoke for a little bit. He walked by Ralph's Pretty Good Grocery, saw that Ralph had closed down, actually, because nobody was buying anything, and Ralph was standing back behind the meat counter, and he was smoking a cigarette. He gave up smoking years ago, so now he just smokes one a week or so, just to kind of keep in practice and to test his own Norwegian discipline. Pastor Inkvist walked around the town. There were a few people sitting in the Chatterbox Cafe, but Dorothy was getting ready to close up. It was 6 o'clock. The church service was going to be at 7 o'clock. There in the Bon Marché beauty salon, Luann was sitting in the styling chair. Nobody had come in for a long time, and she was fast asleep. Her mouth was wide open, and she was snoring, this elegant woman snoring. You could hear it even through the plate glass windows. The Mercantile was closed, and Scoglin's Five and Dime was closed. The sidetrack tap was still open, a mercy. You would not want people who needed a drink to have to drive all the way to Holdingford or Avon or Albany and then have to drive back in that condition. So Wally was still open and serving whiskey to all those who might come in, and akavit and snaps and whatever else other people might need in cold weather. He walked on to the church. Arlene Benson was there. She was making plans for the Valentine's Day couples dinner in the basement of the church, an institution for people who've been married a long, long time and maybe are not sure why. And they come and they always try to make it a little bit entertaining and, have some music, dancing maybe even in the basement of the church. You never know. They have a Hawaiian luau theme this year, and so they're going to have ham and pineapple and poo-poo platters and some torches and fruit for dessert in a kind of a honey sauce. And Arlene had spoken to Marilyn Tollerud, had spoken to her. Maybe she would wear her coconut bikini, which Darrell gave Marilyn years ago, which nobody's actually seen her wear, although Marilyn is a very trim, attractive mother of six. Nobody had ever seen this bikini. They'd only heard rumors of it, and Darrell talking about it at the co-op and at the Chatterbox Cafe. Yes, of course I'll wear it, said Marilyn. Arlene was not expecting that quick response, and now she was wondering if she should have asked her. A member of the church wearing a coconut bikini to the couple's dinner. What does this entail? What might follow from this? She wasn't quite sure. Marilyn got the bikini from her husband after the death of her beloved father, which was a terrible shock to Marilyn. Her father was only 61, and he was a quiet person, and she was always thinking she would get to know him later at some point. Her mother was sort of the dominant partner in that marriage, and she was always, keeping the home straightened and moving things around and reminding him not to put his feet up on tables and to clear away those books from over there. But the father was a quiet man. He was a reader, and readers keep it all inside themselves. He died late one night when her mother was vacuuming in the upstairs hall, and he just collapsed in the living room and was dead when she found him a few minutes later. Who knows how long the time had passed. She blamed herself, her mother, for not being able to hear him if he had cried out because of the vacuum. The doctor said, well, he probably died right away, but Marilyn felt that he said that to make her mother feel better. She blamed her mother as well. There he was, this good, quiet, decent man, dead at 61. She never quite expected that to happen. She was helping her mother clean out his things, and she came across a shoebox with a purple folder in it, and she opened it up, and here were letters her father had written to a woman, apparently a former student, and there was a romance that took place. It was amazing to read these words written by her father. Amazing for any child to imagine their parent in the throes of passion. But here it was. He was quoting E.E. Cummings, the poet, a poet she never ever heard her father quote. Holy to be a fool while spring is in the world, my blood approves, and kisses are a better fate than wisdom. Lady, I swear by all flowers, was nothing her father told her when she was a teenager. Growing up, kisses are a better fate than wisdom. And that poem that begins, she being brand new and, consequently a little stiff. I was worried about her, so I oiled the universal joint and checked my gas and checked her radiator and so forth. And the poem by Ralph Waldo Emerson, give all to love, hold nothing. And then she heard her mother's steps on the stairs, and she stuffed it all back into the purple folder, into the shoebox, and she stuck it back up on the shelf. This amazing set of correspondence of her father who had been in love. The next time she came back to her mother's house, she looked for the shoebox, and it was not there. She asked her mother about it. Her mother said, "What shoebox? What purple folder? I never saw that." And so her father's love affair was gone. It never existed, you see. It was completely erased. Well, this had a big effect on Marilyn, and that day she decided that she would become the seducer of her own husband. Most Lutheran women were not heading in that direction. They were heading in another direction. They were putting on the armor of righteousness. But Marilyn figured you could wear the armor of righteousness whenever you like and then seduce your husband whenever you like too, because it is so easy to seduce a man. They go down like a tall tree, like an aspen tree. 60-foot tall aspen. It's a very brittle tree. You give it 3 whacks with an axe and it starts to topple to the ground. You look at a man, you stand next to him, you put your hand on his shoulder, on his arm, you put your knee up against his leg. He's yours. He's gone. The next thing you know, he's lying flat on his back with his arms and legs in the air, and he's mumbling incoherently. It's so easy to seduce them. Why not do it, especially if you're married to one? Well, Pastor Inkvist didn't know about all of that. He was walking through town, 45 below, wind chill. They came to the service at the church, Darrell and Marilyn. He was surprised to see them and also gratified. They were just those two and the organist and the pastor. There was communion. It did not take long. The service was brief. And he cleaned up and worked at his office, and then he headed back home. And the Bon Marché beauty salon was closed. The Sidetrack's tap still open. He was thinking about Marilyn's mother, Mrs. Rasmussen, who's in the Good Shepherd home and has been there for years, and thinking he should go see her. She's dying now. She thought she was dying for a while, but now she really is dying. Brothers and sisters have been notified and are coming in, flying into town this next week. He thought maybe he'd go visit her. He walked by her house, and there was a couple making love in the living room. The drapes were open, the lights were out, but the TV was still on, and it's a big TV, and he could see 2 figures there in the living room. He walked by, and then he thought maybe somebody had broken in. Maybe teenagers had broken into Mrs. Rasmussen's home. Who else would do this? So he circled around, and he came back for another look. Mrs. Rasmussen dying off at the Good Shepherd home, and here somebody was in her living room, and they were having sex in her living room. He found it hard to believe. And then he came by, and he looked in at the window, and he caught a glimpse of Marilyn Tollerude's face, and she could see him. Their eyes met briefly, the naked woman standing there in her mother's living room. She looked at him. She did not smile and wave. Neither did she duck away. She just looked at him with a look on her face of purpose, a look of purpose and determination. She looked fierce. She had the armor of righteousness on her, even though she was naked at the time. That's the news from Lake Wobegon, where all the women are strong, all the men are good-looking, and all the children are above average. The News from Lake Wobegon podcast is brought to you by Bisquick Heart Smart Pancake and Baking Mix. With 0 grams trans fat and no cholesterol, Bisquick Heart Smart pancakes are a delicious way to be good to your heart. Bisquick, real pancakes, real good.